The gathering is growing by leaps and bounds. We are a new community that's consistently welcoming in or back for the first time or for the first time in a long time people into the family of Christ. And if you're going to be a part of First Methodist Church, be a part of this portion of the body, one of the things you need to know about is that we love kids. We are committed to kids. We are committed to the well-being of children. And that's not just our own children in our nuclear families. That's not just the children in our extended families. That's not just the children in our church. That's not just the children in the city of Fort Worth. It's even the children in Dallas, right? We are committed to children, right, to their loving care and well-being. And instead of just saying that over and over and over again for a month, what I've been doing is inviting you to look through the windows of other people and how they care and how they love and how they answer that call. Brooks Harrington, one of the pastors who's a part of this church and is also a lawyer, he leads something called the Methodist Justice Ministry. That justice ministry, which is able to function based on your giving and your support, is a legal ministry to help people at the most desperate times in their lives be freed from situations of abuse and neglect and have a chance at a healthy and stable life. We do that here because we care. We had a conversation with Robert Rogers, a member of our congregation. He came up and spoke, and he's a person just like you. His plate is full with his career, with his extended family, and yet he's someone who looked at our city, and particularly the way in which we tend to let kids fall behind in their reading and their ability to read at grade level at third grade, and in doing so, we set them up for a lifetime of underachievement or being one step behind, and he stepped up and said, we can do something about this. One of the members of our community is helping transform the city of Fort Worth just by saying, I care. These are all our kids. Not only are they my kids, they're all our kids. Last week, Kat Bear, our own youth minister, spoke and reminded us that they don't stop being our kids once deodorant becomes necessary. Which, by the way, deodorant becomes necessary 6 months before they figure out that deodorant is necessary. Right? We got to stand up and help out there too, right? She reminds us that they're still our kids, and she's particularly shared that one of the key things that God shows us is that God's love is the kind of love that comes out of heaven and goes looking for the one that's lost, and there's no time where that's more necessary than caring for our kids who are in their teenage years, the willingness to go out and find the ones who are pushing you away because they're the ones who need you the most. However, of course, we couldn't do a series on kids, and particularly our church's commitment to kids, without inviting one voice forward. When people are asking about the gathering, and particularly what it is that's helping us engage people and grow, one of the things that I always need to point out is that if you're going to be a church who's focused on reaching young families, you have to have something that's special for the young people in those families. And we're fortunate enough that before the gathering was ever a gleam in our eyes, we already had that portion figured out. We were already doing really wonderful things for ministry, actual ministry with children, actual spiritual development with children, actual discipleship with children before the gathering even started, and that really set the tone for what we're able to do here. In May of 2013, I preached for the first time at this church, and I was in the sanctuary, and a number of my friends and small group members from my last church came, and they were there, just being supportive and encouraging, and I was in a robe, and I stood very still. And I preached to the best of my ability, and afterwards we all went out to Oliver's, which used to exist downtown, and we had some lunch, and we're a group of 20, right? And all of them were saying, yeah, you did fine, we're really proud of you. How about that children's sermon? Wow! And which is the first, I've been to a lot of post-sermon breakdown discussions. I've never had the children's sermon take up an hour of praise. But that's what life is like every week here at Methodist. If you're a part of the sanctuary, or if you have a kid in our community, you're familiar with him. But if you're not, I needed to have him come and share with you, speak to you, and in all honesty, lead you. And he's embarrassed right now, but I get to do that because I have the microphone. A warm gathering welcome, warm up the room, please, for our children's minister, our very own Mr. Mark Burrows. Yeah.
Trying to find an appropriate place to put my Lego cup of water. The altar doesn't seem quite right. Hi, friends. Thanks for having me here. I love that this series is taking place. Just from my own personal experience, I love working with children and being around children because they challenge me to be the best version of myself. I find that I try harder around kids. I find that I work harder to find the right way to say things with kids. Patience level goes up with kids. My own daughters would be quick to point out that you're your best self with other people's kids. which is very true, which should be encouraging to all of us. They're all our kids. So I wanted to start by telling you a couple of things that your kids have done. Yesterday, the children's choirs here went to the ULL baseball fields over on the south part of town, and we sang the Star Spangled Banner and Take Me Out to the Ball Game for their Challenger League. And Challenger League is the best baseball in the city. It's a league that's made up of two teams of children who have different special needs, whether that's children on the autism spectrum or wheelchair bound. And so they play 4 games in the fall, 4 games in the spring. I got into this because of Brian Jolin, who used to be the commissioner of that league, said, "Hey, Mark, why don't you come sing the Star Spangled Banner for a game?" Sure. I sang it. I stayed, watched the game, fell in love. I became a special buddy. So there's the buddies that are, each player has a buddy to help them get the absolute most out of the experience. I became a buddy. That's where our church got our own Special Buddies program. That's where the idea came from. It's like, ooh, these older kids that are there to help these children get the most out of their experience. Why shouldn't we have that on Sunday? So that's when we started that program. And a number of our own youth are buddies as well. In fact, 4 were there yesterday. So we did that. And last week we made posters, and we made a poster for each child that's one of the players on the team. And, you know, when you think, okay, going to sing the Star, that's nice. That's kind of ministry light, maybe mission work with a lowercase m. And I guess I was kind of thinking about that in my brain until we had like 30 kids show up, and then we divided. It was the Padres and the Orioles. And the Padres were on the first base side. They batted first. And one kid, we'll call him Roger, got a hit. Everybody gets a hit, and every hit is a home run, which is good to know, right? That they play baseball. They enjoy it. And so as Roger hits and is running down the first base path, there is a scream of applause from a humongous crowd, all holding signs. And then Roger sees his sign, and he's running, and he's like, and then runs, and that's ministry with a capital M. And that's just one example of what our kids are doing. When all our kids are in the children's wing, sometimes we will walk by and we'll see, oh, they're working with Legos, or they're doing this, that, and the other. That's what they're doing. They're doing that. But so these children believe that everyone is their kids too. Another example, we're doing a musical coming up on May 20th at 2 o'clock in the sanctuary. It is a Table for 5,000, and it's a retelling of the miracle of the loaves and the fishes when 5,000 people were fed. And we're basing it on the John version of that story. It's one of the only miracles other than the resurrection that's in all 4 Gospels. But only in John do we learn that the 5 loaves and the 2 fish were brought by a child. And that's part of the miracle, right? It's not just that Jesus did some kind of magic trick. It's that this child took a look at a basket with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and said, if I give this to Jesus, he'll do something with it. And so we're going to do the musical. It's about feeding. It's about sharing what we have. So we're like, well, what can we do with that? And we worked together with the kids, and they decided they don't want to just do a concert. They don't want to just do a show. They want to make it a benefit. And so we are going to be raising money. And they had 3 options of what they could raise money for. One was justice ministry, and that got a ton of votes. We talked all about what that was. And Brooks was like, really? You told the kids about it? I'm like, yeah. As Mr. Rogers would say, anything mentionable is manageable. So we mention it, and we make it manageable. Like, okay, that's good. The Kenya Music Academy, which is a part of my heart, and then the one they ended up going with is the Food for Kids, the program where backpacks are filled and bags so that kids can take the food home. They said, we want to do that one. And so that's another example of what they're doing. I wanted to set the table with that before getting into anything else, because I think it's so important. What we're all in here doing, what we're all raising our kids to do. So I was thinking about a proverb. This is one of my favorites. Proverbs, it's 22, it's verse 6. Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. Or the CEB, I reckon that's probably what you have, right? You lanced it up. Yeah, it's the CEB. So I just went to Bible Hub online, and that's the one I came up with. So I thought this would be a really valuable way to approach this because this community, the gathering community, is incredibly exciting with what's going on here and what's going on in children's. And it's so exciting because for years we've been building this program where kids are so excited to come to church that they drag their parents. And now we've got this where parents are dragging their kids. As long as someone's dragging someone, I don't care how that happens. It'll just come through the door, get here. So I thought it'd be really good to kind of reflect on heydays. And sometimes one of the most valuable things a church can have is a heyday, and sometimes one of the most damaging things a church can have is a heyday that they're no longer in. And we can talk about, the youth building is so great and people can be so excited about some of the new things happening, and then there's always going to be someone, you should have seen it when it had a bowling alley. And there's just always some, which is true, right? It did have a bowling alley. I mean, there's always going to be that, but you should have. So I think it's important to reflect on heydays and what we can learn from them, especially when we're no longer in them. So I thought I would reflect a little bit on the heyday of the youth choir. Which I know there's a lot of people in this room right now that definitely remember that. By the way, don't look now, but I see some things happening that are pointing up, and it's incredibly exciting. But I wanted to do this by way of pointing out mistakes I've made. That's always fun, right? Nina sure enjoys it. But when I first got here in 1995, it was to build a youth choir, and there were 12 kids in the youth choir. And I guess the hardest thing for me in those first years when we just really took off was not to sprain my shoulder by patting myself on the back because of how awesome I was. So some things. By the way, these notes are for me. I would have loved to share these with you, but I will go down every rabbit trail in the world. So these kind of keep me on task. So 3 things. We're going to talk about 3 things. Speaking of heydays, all right, so this will be one of the things that I really got wrong was that I did not recognize the power of the pipeline. So while I was working with the youth choir, 7th through 12th grade, I really wasn't aware or paying much attention to the fact that over here in this building, a woman named Tanny Simons had this incredible program where she was building voices and had kids, little bitties. And so year after year, Tanny was sending me just gobs of kids that liked to sing, that knew what it was like to get up on a Sunday morning and come and sing in their church for their Lord. And I didn't realize it until probably about 3 years after that pipeline was gone. And by that time, it was a little bit too late. I should have appreciated that pipeline when it was there more. That was a big mistake. So what does that have to do with right now? What does it have to do with our kids? There's something amazing happening right now, and it's also incredibly terrifying. We have a ton of kids on the first floor, thanks in no small part to what's going on here. Paula Wagstaff will send me the numbers, and when I see 82 kids on the first floor, I'm like, whoa, Lance must have a good series going on. Something juicy, right? Yeah, I've watched them online. They're really good. They're great. I love them. Yeah. But I know that's wonderful. Now, you can all think, wow, 82 kids, and that's just pre-K and younger. That's amazing. And then, and 22 2-year-olds in the same room. Wow, oh no. That's a problem. That's a real problem. So we have a pipeline right now, and kids at that age, their brains are just the spongiest sponges ever. We can get so much God into them right now, but there's something we need to do. So one of the things we need to do is have more classes down on the first floor. We need to not have ever, and there were 27 twos on Easter, and that was including her bringing in extra teachers. Those numbers have not gone down, by the way. Right now, is it the 3rd Sunday after Easter? 4th Sunday after Easter, and we're still having record attendance on both floors. Once again, thanks in no small part to what's going on in here. So one of the things that we're looking to do is, and I'm going to try really hard not to recruit, okay? I can't do it well. My predecessor, Cynthia McElrath, she was just conniving and sneaky, and you'd be in a classroom teaching before you knew what hit you. Your hair wouldn't even be dry from getting to church yet, and she'd have you in a classroom. So I'm not going to do that. I telegraph my moves way too much. I'm not that sneaky. What I'm going to say is one of the things we do want is for people to prayerfully consider if starting in the fall, if maybe you've got a real heart for working with pre-K, if what maybe something you're really good at is circle time and getting on the floor with kids and teaching the Zacchaeus story by going and getting that doll that's over in the corner and having one of the kids be the sycamore tree, and then that doll climbs up and you love it, and the kids walk away and the parents are like, what'd you learn about Zacchaeus? And they're so excited. If that's something that suits you, I want you to come talk to me about that. That might be and even when your kids are grown, they're all our kids, right? Right? Isn't that what we've been saying? They're all our kids. So I think there's kind of this mindset of, well, I'm just going to follow my kids and then tag out. But what if your real skill is working with preschool? What if that's something you're really, really good at? My kids, I got one going to college in the fall. Okay? They're not in second grade, but my sweet spot is second and third grade. For some reason, arrested development on my part, I suppose. Right? But we're locked and loaded. All right, so I wanted to talk about that. They're growing. Here's another big one. Say, number two. I should have done this for the beginning. Look, my sermons are like 4 minutes long, right? Big props, small words. This is already way longer than and normally it's with my back turned to just about everybody, so I'm doing the best I can. So one of the big things is I forgot to tell our story. As the youth choir grew, something happened. That last group who remembered what it was like when it was just 12 kids had all gone on. And all anybody remembered was, well, it's always been big. It's always been growing. It's always been thriving. The gathering has always packed Wesley Hall. And we forget when it was at the Brit. And we forget when it was in the Justin building. And when we forget when it was in here on Sunday evening and we're doing everything. And to look at it now, it's easy to forget. It's incredibly important to keep telling our story. To remind ourselves that as quickly as these and as wonderful as the growth can happen, it can go. And it won't even go like that. It'll be slow. It'll be that dear family going to that church. And that family moved away. And it'll happen. And next thing you know, don't ever forget where this started and how hard the work takes to get it there. It's the same thing was true with the youth choir. The same thing is going on in the children's ministry. Ash Wednesday. We do the Ash Wednesday family service in here at 6:15. There's a reason we do the Ash Wednesday service. This is the only room we can fit it in outside the sanctuary. It was in the chapel for a few years. Before that, it started with me and Debbie Schroner and 6 children in the atrium. And that was just 7 years. That's how these things get started. If we don't keep reminding people and telling that story, in 8 more years, it might be me and 1 other person and 6 kids in the atrium. We have to be vigilant about that, about how beautiful this is, about how fragile this is, about how tender this is, and it takes constant nurture. It takes constant growth. Polar Express Party is another great example. That's a zoo. We have to set up tables outside in December for a Polar Express Party. I mean, who's been to the Polar Express Party? Let me tell you about the Polar Express Party, because that's not enough hands. It's, the movie, The Polar Express. We read a little bit of the book. It started up in the children's wing in the movie room with about 25 kids. We'd serve a little hot cocoa. It was a nice little thing. And then just grew, and it grew, and it grew. So now it's over 200 people. It's in here. The tables are set up like trains. We have people go and they get their meal, and they come in, and then I read a little snippet from the book. We have a prayer, and then the movie starts. And y'all know where the hot chocolate scene happens in the movie, where the waiters on the train come out with hot chocolate? That's right, when we have Nancy Froman and Chris Rathburn with their carts and the tureens filled with hot chocolate, and they're dancing, and the kids run to the back because that's where they know, and they go and they get their hot chocolate and all this stuff, and they come and then we watch most of the rest of the movie. Then we stop and we sing a couple of Christmas carols because there's some slow parts near the end, and we've just jacked them all up on hot chocolate, and they're making their own fun. And so then we start the movie again, and the movie's over, and like, well, it looks like it's about time to go home. We should close with one more song. And we sing Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And then in comes Santa Claus through the door, and he comes and sits right down, and he hands each one of them a jingle bell. Of course, I love the Polar Express, because what is it all about? It's about believing. It's about belief, so we can always find that way to redeem it for the kingdom. It started in in the children's wing with just a few kids. Academy. We didn't always have a giant light bright. We didn't always have 10 classes and 2 teams of therapy dogs and a live hamster and more Legos than we know what to do with. It didn't start like that. It started with, it was like 25 kids. We had like 3 options, and it grew and grew and grew. That constantly needs growth. It needs grown-ups coming in, people who aren't the kids' parents. I'll talk more about that in just a second. How am I doing on time?
5 minutes.
I've been doing 5. I got 5 more minutes.
You got 5 more minutes.
Oh, man. Okay. Move. All right. I don't like this. All right. Say number 3.
Number 3.
I underestimated the power of church friends. So when I was working with the choir, my head was buried deep in musical excellence, and we were good. We were really singing at Bass Hall, super choir, big choir. They were amazing, but that wasn't what it was all about. It was never about that. It was about community. It was about having a place of belonging and acceptance and support no matter what. And I kind of got lost on that a little bit. Kids, once again, really, they get your head right with that stuff. So some things about community. For example, a really good example of that's going to be happening this afternoon. Paul and Rhonda Rich are opening up their home. All the 5th graders, the high 5 class, are having hot dogs. About building community. It doesn't have to happen inside these walls, right? The church, we are the church. I hate it when we always say, the church is people, kids. Church is people. And then we go, here's the church. Here's the steeple, open the doors, and there are the people, right? And we call the church the building. And well, I went to go bring my pledge, but the church was closed. The church is never closed. The church is never closed. The building might be closed, but it's really, here is the building. Here is the building after a capital funds campaign. Open the doors, and there's the church. And if the doors were to be locked, there would still be the church. The church is always the church. So one of the things, and I'm so glad Kat was here last week, and I heard Lance say it a few minutes ago, they are always our kids. They are always our kids. And I want to say this right now, as big and bold as I possibly can. You're here, stop shopping for a church. You are the church. Stop. And this happens, right? And some of us have benefited from, we're going to try that program, we're going to try that program, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Stop shopping for the church and be the church. And part of what I say by that, some of you have kids who are starting to get in maybe 6th grade, maybe your first one's about to start looking at 7th grade. Man, let me tell you, we've got the best youth minister in town. She's amazing. I'm going to brag on her for just a second. Hope she doesn't watch this. She's the kind of youth minister who will go to a 3-hour play because the kid she knows has 4 lines. She's the youth minister who will go to a belt test that lasts 5 minutes, and she'll sit through an hour and a half of kids she doesn't know trying to break boards. She's there. She's there. She's in it. She's intelligent. She's sincere. She has helped our family out in ways I can hardly enumerate. But even if she's only here for 2 more years, you are the church. And if you're dissatisfied with some of the things that you feel are going on in the youth ministry or not going on in the youth ministry, be the church. You be the youth ministry that you feel our kids need. Let's have this be the place where everybody in Fort Worth comes for youth. The pipeline is there. The families are there. The parents who are talented and amazing and know the story are there. Let's build another heyday. I want to close. Do I have a couple minutes to close?
Yep.
Thank you. So why is that so important? I want to spend a minute just talking about church friends. And how Cynthia, what my predecessor would say that, she would get the kids in a circle and say, you look around that circle. These are your church friends. These are the friends who are going to be with you through thick and thin, no matter what. Kat's a church friend. Like I said, our oldest goes to college in the fall, go Blue Hens. And that's University of Delaware. And so we're, where's Blue Hens? Blue Hens, what conference are they? I don't even know. Kat was invaluable. There came a point where Emma just couldn't listen to her mom and dad anymore, and some of you may be there right now with your own kids, and it meant so much to us that Kat could just take her out. They could go to Avoca, have coffee before school, and just talk it out. But there was another church friend that she had. It reminds me back in the year 2000, the youth choir had a baby shower. Emma wasn't born yet for me and Nina. It was over at Melinda Smoot's house. She's our communications director, and Kristen, her oldest, was in the youth choir. And there was a little girl named Allie Kaitzer, who wasn't even 2 years old, and that was Melinda's youngest, was running around. And it was so neat that when we were going through all of the stuff with where's Emma going to go, what's she going to do, that Allie Kaitzer, a sophomore in college now in Seattle, was back for spring break, that she could sit down with Emma, her church friend, her true blue friend that would give it to her straight. And they talked it through and helped Emma make a decision. When mom and dad were kind of, we need our church friends. Stay here, stay engaged, stay involved, because the things that you're building right now are so beautiful and so precious, and they need to remain. One last thing, and this is really selfish. I've been here for a few years, 23 now, and Mike Marshall and I got to do something so special yesterday. We were in the chapel for the baptism of Barry, Hudson's grandson. Barry's been here forever. I had both his girls in the choir. It was Camille's son. And how special that was. And Mike and I were just talking about how neat it was that they still keep coming here, that this feels like home. So when that's happening, when Ellie walks down the aisle, for her wedding, I want you to be walking her down in there or in here. Or when Jackson brings his son to be baptized, I want that to be here. I don't want that to be at some other place. Maybe I'm just being selfish about that, but don't y'all want that? Don't y'all want that? Don't you want to see Lillian here? I want it happening here. I want to be here when it happens. I expect an invitation when it does. I love your children. I hope you know that. And I want to make sure that you know how many opportunities you have to love on your children, and I need you to help me with that. They're amazing, and they need you. We all do. Thanks.